Hello, I'm Robert Griffin, the Executive Minister here at the Sunshine Cathedral in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I want to thank you for joining us for worship via the internet today. And if you are ever in the Fort Lauderdale area, let me personally invite you to stop by and worship with us on Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:30 a.m. We also invite you to join us on our Facebook group or follow us on Twitter. But for this moment, let's go inside and see what exciting worship opportunity lay in store for us.
Good morning. My name is B.R. Rhodes, and I am a member of your board of directors. I was born and raised in southern Illinois. Anyone from Illinois? A few of us. And as a child, I was raised in the Southern Baptist Church. And one Sunday after church, I was riding home with my grandmother, dusty country road, and I said to her, "Grandma, we sang a song today, 'Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.'" "What's a wretch?" She pulled the car over and pressed park on that dusty country road. And she said, "Robert Edward, a wretch is a sinner. A wretch is an evil person." And I looked at her and I said, "Grandma, am I a wretch?" And she had this sort of sad look on her face, and she said, "Well, yes, you are." And with that, I remember that being the awareness of my spiritual development unfolding. The next week at church, before the invitational hymn, "Just As I Am," I ran up to that altar as fast as I could and said to the minister, my Uncle Herman, "I want to be saved, because my grandma says that if I acknowledge I'm a wretch, that God has sent his son to come to this earth, and all I need to do is say that I get it, I'm a sinner, I'm sorry, and now I need you in my life." And then she said, "I'd even get to go to heaven. I want to sign up for the fire insurance policy right now." Uncle Herman prayed with me, and the congregation, I remember feeling so loved because there were tears and there was celebration. It really felt good at the moment. It was such a proud moment for my family that Uncle Herman and Aunt Eva took me to Carlinville, Illinois to celebrate by buying me a dilly bar at the Dairy Queen. After my childhood years, I would graduate from college, I would move to South Texas, I would become an elementary school teacher, but there was a new awareness that I'm gay. And with that, for me, came a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of sadness, and we all know that those emotions will eventually eat away at the container that holds it. I thought I'd find my peace at the Assembly of God in South Texas. And I don't want to say that those experiences were all bad, because they weren't. But I do remember the minister talking a lot about derelicts being needed to be transformed. And I felt like I was the biggest derelict in the congregation. I would move from there and go to Austin, Texas, where I became an elementary school counselor. And by some divine miracle, I stumbled into the Unity Church. And there I learned that I wasn't a derelict that needed to be transformed, but that God truly loved me just the way I am. I moved to St. Louis years after that, met Michael. He being a recovering Catholic, me being a recovering Southern Baptist, we landed in the Episcopal Church for 19 years. And that was an awesome place for us to learn and grow spiritually. And then I would just filter out the stuff that didn't make a whole lot of sense, which I think a lot of people do in some churches. When we moved here 4 years ago, Michael and I were set to find our Episcopal church, and I went on the internet and I saw a little blurb about this place. I said, "Michael, could we just take a little field trip, go there one time, and then we'll go find our real church?" He was like, "All right, but one time." It happened to be Easter Sunday 4 years ago. You all know what that's like. We walked in, and during the introit, there was singing, there was clapping, and it was joyous, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it sort of reminds me like the Assembly of God Church." Then the music cranked up, and we sang, "Christ the Lord is risen today," and there was a procession with a cross and vestments. Oh, it's an Episcopalian-type church. And then I caught myself saying, "Look, you got to keep your eyes on the words here. Some of the words are changed." Now, I say that And I thank God weekly for that, because I knew I would never, ever have to hear, if Katie's the director or if Durrell's the minister with this clergy, I would never have to hear the line, "Saved a wretch like me," ever again. The service continued. It was joyous. The sermon, the healing time, the communion, the soloists, the choir. It was just glorious. And I knew that we were talking about an omnipresent God, that there are no miracles, no mistakes. I knew that it was all inclusive, and it was a joy and it was a blessing. On the way out of the church, I embraced Durrell, and I said, wow. I was sort of out of breath, because we had just said the last prayer, the prayer of protection, which I have said probably 1,000 times prior to coming to this church. But on that day when we said the very last line, "And wherever God is," what? All is well, and what? And we are blessed. That was me. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And you know what? It was like a wave went through me. It was a peace. Maybe that was a salvation experience. I don't know. I wish Aunt Eva and Uncle Herman could have been here, because that would have been a dilly bar moment at the Wilton Manors Dairy Queen. We left. I said, Durrell, my Assembly of God, my Baptist, my Episcopal, my Unity, my Course in Miracles, my trips to Broadway, they all collided here. And he said, welcome home. Stewardship. Michael and I choose to give, and will increase our level of giving this year with our time, our talent, and our finances, because we're filled with gratitude. We're filled with gratitude when we see God made visible here, even through a little animated choir lady who every Sunday just dancing and jumping up and down, and we see God in her. I'm giving a little example there. We are filled with gratitude. We are filled with gratitude because a year ago this month we were able to be married in this sacred space that exceeded the dreams we had for ourselves. We will continue to give and increase our level of giving because we believe in the mission and vision of this spiritual community. The outreach, what happens here on the weekly basis in this service, on the internet, social media. And you know what? I wish this church had been around for me when I was 6, but it wasn't. But it's here now for you and me, and it's here for today's 6-year-olds who can hear the message through family and friends who see God in a different light. I'm going to close by saying, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that blesses and loves you and me. Let us give freely and let us receive joyfully. Thank you.
Our first reading is from the wisdom of Pliny the Elder. In wine, there is truth.
Our second reading is from the wisdom of Marty Rubin. Drink freely the wine life offers you, and don't worry how much you spill. In these human words, God's voice is heard.
Our third reading is from the wisdom of Martin Luther King, Jr. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? In these human words, God's voice is heard.
Our fourth reading is from the Gospel according to John. There was a wedding in Cana of Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother said to him, "They don't have any wine." Jesus replied, "Woman, what does that have to do with me? My time hasn't come yet." His mother told the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby were 6 stone water jars used for the Jewish cleansing ritual, each able to hold about 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some from them and take it to the head waiter," and they did. The head waiter tasted the water that had become wine. He didn't know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. The head waiter called the groom and said, Everyone serves the good wine first. They bring out the second-rate wine only when the guests are drinking freely. You kept the good wine until now. This was the first miraculous sign that Jesus did in Cana of Galilee. In these human words, God's voice is heard.
Well, the gospel story today is very odd. There is this party that Jesus and his friends are at, and his mother's there, and we see this weird trick where they run out of they run out of wine, and so they have to turn water into wine. We've all been there, right? It's not really something that happens, right? So one wonders if there was sort of like a Jedi mind trick. This is really wine. P.S. It's water. It's really wine. It's really wine. And people are fooled. Or if it was some sort of real strange magic where somehow one thing became a totally different thing. That is the least acceptable explanation in my mind. Or is it a metaphor? Is the wine of gladness? And is there something from the story that can show us how to keep that wine of gladness flowing? And I believe that is probably the most reasonable explanation. We are celebrating this wine of gladness today, being very respectful of those who are in recovery, of course. We aren't making light of those who struggle with that, and not just people who physically can't drink alcohol, but some of us because of our weight issues. Alcohol is just a glass full of calories, and right? And so we don't drink. When I'm watching my weight, many months out of the year, I drink only on Sundays. I wonder why I picked that day, but I drink only. I'll have a couple of martinis at lunch only on Sundays, and then the rest of the week I'm in the gym and trying to eat properly or whatever. So we all have our issues. So we want to be respectful of that. And at the same time, in ancient cultures, wine did have an importance. It was medicinal. It was part of celebration. Here at the Sunshine Cathedral, we serve a non-alcoholic wine at the table because we want everyone to be able to participate. And so we are respectful of those who don't want to do that. So when we're talking about the wine of gladness, we are talking about a symbol. And this story gives us some insights into how to receive the wine of gladness. B.R., in his testimony earlier, sort of demonstrated how some of us were denied the wine of gladness. We thought religion was about making us miserable. Religion was about telling us how bad we were. I remember praying fervently, sometimes with tears, before I would receive communion every Sunday when I was very young. Lord, I am not worthy to receive you, but only say the word, and I shall be healed. I hear people murmuring it. You prayed that too. What does that do to your psyche to say week after week after week, and sometimes day after day, if you would go to daily services, Lord, I am not worthy. It's lifted out of a story that has a very positive message, but it was not used in a wine of gladness sort of way. I am not worthy, I am not worthy. Well, I eventually found another church, like BR, I was on a search, and I found another church that had a book of common prayer. And one of those prayers, we are not worthy so much as to gather the crumbs from beneath thy table. That's good for the self-esteem. I am not worthy even for the crap that falls onto the floor. This is the good news. And so we have found ways to re-envision faith. It's not that we have to accept the old interpretations or walk away from it entirely. We can make our religious experience be an uplifting, a joyful one. And I think we see that in this story of this wedding feast at Cana. And so there's three things I want us to see as we remember the story that Deacon Michael read to us. And the first is, they're at the party, they run out of wine. What terrible planning that was. But they run out of wine, and Mary comes to her son Jesus and says, they're out of wine. And he says, woman, what is that to me? I am a guest at this party. I'm not tending bar. I'm not the caterer. Why are you telling me? And her response, she ignores his sass. She didn't even try to hear any of that. She just immediately turns to the caterer and says, do whatever he says. He's going to fix this because I told him to, right? No, when Mama is not happy, nobody's happy. And so she said, the party is going to be a bust. If you don't fix it, get to fixing it. Do whatever he says. So Jesus reluctantly says yes to Mary's instruction to help out. So then Jesus tells the caterer, bring me some pots of water. And they said yes. Now, how strange that is, they must have thought, water is a poor substitute for wine, but what else? What are we going to do? So the caterers say yes to Jesus. Jesus says yes to Mary. People say yes to opportunities. People say yes to possibilities. People say yes to trying something when it's not going to work out anyway, so you may as well try something, and then maybe it will work out. And so we see people saying yes. Yes to opportunities. Yes to possibilities. Yes to what might be. And from that, the story says, great things happen. The party is saved. The celebration goes on. And so I think what we see from that is that life is giving us opportunities, and all we have to do is say yes. Have you noticed how we often argue for our limitations? How we are quick to tell you why the opportunity is false, why the attempt will fail, why someone's great idea is not even worth considering. We rush to defend the limitations instead of saying yes to the possibilities. In this story, we see, we can call it magic, what happens when people say yes to opportunities, yes to possibilities. What is the opportunity before you today? What is the healing possibility in front of you right now? Maybe you could heal from a lifetime of believing you were not worthy. Are you willing to consider that you could think about that differently? Maybe you could start having better self-esteem. Maybe you could start hoping for a healthier sort of relationship. Maybe you could believe that you could start recovering from a financial disaster. Maybe you could start seeing, even in the midst of the pain or the physical limitation, how there's still some blessing to be had. That no matter what has been lost, there is still something that is left, and you can build on that. Are you willing to see what that might be and say yes to it? Are you willing to say, you know what, I've got a better question. Are you ready to sing yes? Yes, 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 yes. Yes, 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 yes. Wasn't that beautiful? And if this were my memorial service, and the speaker said, oh, didn't Durrell touch our lives? And wasn't Durrell a good-hearted soul? And didn't he mean well and try well and often succeed? And don't we believe that he is forever in the heart of God? I hope the congregation sings as one. Yes, 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 yes. But this is not a funeral. And I'm talking about saying yes to possibilities. I'm talking about saying yes to opportunities. Talking about saying yes to potential miracles. And that deserves a funky kind of yes. So let's funk up our yes a little bit. Are you ready to see and seize possibilities? Give us a funky yes, Barbara. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, 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 yes. That still sounded like a maybe. Are we ready to say we are God's miracle and not God's mistake? That just as I am, remember that song? We never meant it? Just as I am good enough. I am part of the creation God calls very good. I have a divine inheritance. And because that is true, I can start cashing in today. I can start withdrawing from the heavenly ATM on joy and peace and hope and gladness right here and right now. Are you willing to say yes to that? I think that deserves an energetic yes. Yes. Let's do it one more time. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, 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 yes. Do it again. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, 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 yes. Very good. But there's 2 more points. Not only did Jesus say yes to Mary and the caterer say yes to Jesus, but what happened next? What did the yes involve? The yes involved sharing what they had. We're out of wine. We didn't stock the bar properly. So what do you have? We got a lot of water. We got a lot of water. Well, then let's start dishing that out. Let's serve what we have. Let's don't be bad hosts just because the cupboard ran bare. Serve what you have. Share what you have. I once had a parishioner in another church that says, well, I'm struggling financially, and all I could ever give is maybe 50 cents in the offering, so I just don't give anything. I said, shame on you. We need your 50 cents. If you can spare it, I don't want, if 50 cents is the difference between gas and not having gas, or lunch and not having lunch, I don't want your 50 cents. But if you've got 50 cents to give it. If you have water, you've run out of wine, but you still got water, serve me some water. When we give what we can, when we share what we can, things seem to happen. You might be a little boy with a sack lunch. Well, let's try to feed this multitude with a sack lunch. It seems ridiculous, but let's do what we can. You might be a widow preparing your last meal for you and your son. And here comes a prophet, wants to horn in on your last meal. He wants your last meal to be his last meal too. But you say, oh, come on in. It's our last one anyway. We're going to die anyway. And so you share your last meal with the prophet, and it lasts and lasts. There's something about sharing what you have and doing what you can, instead of just dismissing it and saying it's not good enough, so I'm not going to bother. But if we will say, I have something to give, and we give what we can, and we all do that, miracles seem to happen. And the third thing that I want you to see is the miracle takes place in the midst of celebration. You know, I've often said, people want to know what exactly fundamentalism is, and I always explain, a fundamentalist is one who is desperately afraid that someone somewhere is having a good time. The miracle at Cana happened while people were having a good time. It wasn't while they were hating themselves and beating themselves up and telling themselves that they weren't worthy. It was in the midst of a celebration. They were celebrating life. They were celebrating relationships. They were celebrating themselves. And in the midst of that, something amazing happened. In 1985, 86, the 80s are kind of a blur to me, but somewhere in the mid-80s, I went to my first gay bar. Not my last, but my first. And it was called BJ's. I think it was owned by somebody called Betty Jean. I don't know, but it was called BJ's. My second gay bar was called Our House Lounge. We called it the Cha-Cha Palace. My third gay bar was called The Gig. They swore it stood for gay interest groups, but we all insisted that it meant Get It Girl. But we always had these funky names, right? But my first one was BJ's. And it was in a rural setting on a 2-lane highway. And I walked into BJ's, my first gay bar ever, and it was packed. It wasn't a big place. There were maybe 60, 70 people, but still, who knew there were 60 or 70 gay people in the world? And here they all were. And they were having a good time. And I danced, and I drank, and I sang, and I played, and I had a good time. And I kissed someone. Now, I had kissed people before, but this was my first real kiss. You know what I'm talking about. This is the first one that counted. It was at BJ's in the woods. My first real kiss. I don't remember his name, but I remember that night. Remember that night. It was a good night. Well, shortly into the night, someone comes running in and says, "Girls, girls." Meanwhile, there were men and women in the room, but it meant all of us. "Girls, girls, some queen has run her car into the ditch." As one, people, like 2/3 of the people in the bar go rushing outside and surround this car that sure enough is in a ditch on 2 tires, all jacked up like this, and we surround it like a band of angels, like guardian angels around your bed at night. We surrounded this car and we hoisted this car. As I remember the story, it was like some sort of huge monster truck. I now think it was a 1960-something Beetle. But anyway, it was... We surrounded this car and we hoisted this car into the air and put it on level ground. And this little wisp of a thing next to me said, "Girl, I haven't felt that much in years." And I said, "Sister, I doubt if you ever felt this much." But it was amazing. Because in the midst of celebration, in the midst of being who we were and being glad about who we were and celebrating our lives together, when there was an emergency, we were able to handle it. In the midst of celebration, when problems or challenges come, you've got the joy, the strength, the reserves to respond. And so we lifted our friend up and put them on level ground. That's what loving life and drinking freely from the wine of gladness can do. It keeps us uplifted so that we can uplift others. And that's the real miracle, isn't it? I don't remember who the door person was that night at the bar. I don't remember who the bartenders were. I don't remember who owned the bar. But I am so thankful for those people who were of service to create an environment where we could be together, be ourselves, celebrate ourselves, and come to one another's rescue in a time of need. That bar and that moment was the perfect example of what the Church of Jesus Christ is meant to be. That was the perfect example of what drinking and sharing the wine of gladness is all about. And more and more and more churches are catching on to that these days. But long before they did, there were bars and there were clubs. And there were the people who cut our hair, and the people who drove us in cabs, and the people who checked us into hotels, and the people who served us, the people who took care of us, the people who cooked for us, or cleaned for us, or welcomed us, or opened the door for us. And so those people who lent themselves in service so that we could have an experience of gladness, I just want us to think about who those people are today. And I want us to be thankful for their ministry in our lives. The person who cut your hair, the person who opened the door for you, the person who served you food or served you a cocktail or served you a diet soda, they weren't just doing a job. They were creating an experience that you might remember 30 years later as being a beautiful and powerful moment. And so thank you, servers in our community. Thank you, those who give of yourself, who share what you have, so that all of us can be our best selves and share more of ourselves. And what we learn from this story today, from the gospel story, is that if we will say yes to the possibilities in life, and if we will share what we have, whatever it is, and if we will dare to celebrate who we are, then we will always have the means to lift up others in their moment of need. And that's our purpose. And this is the good news. Amen.
Thank you for joining us today here at the Sunshine Cathedral. If you're ever in the Fort Lauderdale area, we invite you to stop by and worship with us on Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:30 a.m. If you'd like to make a donation to the Sunshine Cathedral, or if you'd like to find out other resources that the Cathedral has to offer, please visit us at www.sunshinecathedral.org. Until the next time, we look forward to seeing you here at the Sunshine Cathedral.